being proactive and creating more options for yourself isn't the same as knowing how to find the real love.
Sometimes when you have too many options, you end up with nothing because you have so much to choose from.
A big problem is that we've become, much in the same way we have in other areas of our life, we've become dopamine addicts in our love lives. You can desire someone, but we have to start separating what makes someone desirable from what makes them a great partner. You have the magic now. You can decide what you want to do with it. You took you with you in that deal. You didn't lose you.
This is now your second time being on this podcast. And I will tell you, it's Matthew Hussey, who is a world-renowned relationship coach, who, by the way, I know why people like you so much. You're so relatable. You write and talk like that really connects with people. Like, it doesn't matter if you're married, not married, single, boy, girl, whatever. It's like you can find a nugget that is so that resonates, and it happens, and it happened again. His new book is called Love Life, and I loved it. I really did. So.
I'm honored. I'm really. I feel. I feel really proud of it, and I've tried to do something here to really put myself into it in a way that I don't think I ever have with my work before.
Really?
So, I mean, I always naturally, you do indirectly, you're always putting yourself into the things you create on some level, but I think much more openly and vulnerably in this book. I think people who have been following me for a while will get the sense that they know me much better through this book.
You know what? Because it's true. You open the book by saying that you would be like if people would, like, they think that you would be this great guy who would be great to date because you're so emotionally, like, connected and your EQ level so high. But you say yourself, like, you were like a nightmare to date.
For a while, yeah. I wanted to take myself off of any kind of pedestal that anyone had put me on right away at the beginning of this book. I had read comments for years of people on my videos saying, he would be such a great guy to date, or he'd be the perfect person to be with. And I knew that wasn't true because I was still figuring my own stuff out. And I was not, I dated in a way that wasn't always healthy, and I was confused, and confused people hurt people because they don't know what they want. I didn't know how to make myself happy in this area, let alone someone else. So it took me a while to figure that out. I knew how to create opportunity. And when I first started out, that was really what I was doing for people. I was helping them create more opportunity in their love life. And that was kind of what I got known for. We're going back 17 years now, but that was like what I first got known for was helping people be proactive in their love life. But being proactive and creating more options for yourself isn't the same as knowing how to find the real love and the relationship that you want to have, and to find peace and happiness in your love life. They're very different things. And while I knew for myself how to create opportunity, I had not yet figured out how to find happiness in my love life. That took me a lot longer.
It's interesting you say that, because you said the word options, and I think that is like the crux of everything, right? Like, sometimes when you have too many options, you end up with nothing because you have so much to choose from. You don't know if to go this way, that way, and it can be exceptionally confusing. And you were probably, like you said, you were confused because you had so many options. Because the truth is, like, you're cute, you got a good accent, you're smart, you're charming.
Despite looking tired.
Yeah.
I came in today and you went, you look awful.
No, I did not say you look awful. You could never look awful. You could never look awful. Let's just say that right off the bat. I said you look tired. It looks like you came from one interview after another, and that was like the 15th of the day. That's all. That's all.
No,
but
it's
I always
fine.
say that because you have such a nice way about you. I know I can tease you. I can say something. You're not going to take yourself too seriously.
No.
Did you go upstairs and cry in the bathroom after
I said
that?
I cried a little bit.
That's why your eyes looked like they were tearing. Okay. But yeah, so don't you, what do you believe? Like, do you think that options can be a killer for people who sometimes end up with nothing because they don't know, they're overwhelmed with opportunity? Like, you have two different sides of the spectrum, right? You have people who can't get arrested can't find people, and then you have other people who have all the opportunity in the world, and both of those sides can be very, very challenging.
Yeah, and so, both are extremely challenging for different reasons. And to feel, I work with so many people who feel that they've become invisible in their love lives, and they feel that, talking about refining your options is irrelevant because I can't even seem to find anybody. So like, what's the point in me having these high standards? These high standards are just keeping me alone forever.
Right.
And that's a valid point. And we have to be honest we have to talk about that, because it's all very well telling people not to go for these casual situationships if they want to find real love and so on. But I put an example in the book of someone who said, if I didn't date casually, I'd never be with anyone.
Right.
Because I never, I can't find anyone. I can't find the real relationship you're talking about. At the other end of the spectrum are people who associate with having options, but having options can also be its own form of unhappiness, because you just, you don't know how to make yourself happy, and you don't know how to be happy with what you've got. You're constantly in a state of endless optimization in your love life that never seems to land you in a place where you finally feel like, okay, this is it.
Absolutely.
You feel chronically dissatisfied. And that's a special kind of pain as well for people, especially if it goes on for so long that you start to think there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Why can I not seem to be happy in this area? What's going on with me? I keep finding people. I don't feel quite how I want to feel, or, it's a scary place. It's a scary place for anybody to feel like they just can't seem to find happiness in this area of their life. That is so crucial. It's such a big area of our lives. We all want to find love.
Right.
We all want that in our lives. And it feels like such a complicated area. And it feels like we have such little control in this area. If we want to lose weight, we can eat better, we can go to the gym, and our body shape will change. You could go on a date every night of the week for the next year and still not find love. Or you could find love and that person betrays you and you're back to square one again. So it is maddening for many people to find themselves like just wanting to give up in an area that they also feel like they can't give up on, because it doesn't matter if you say I've given up on love, you still feel lonely and you still want to find someone.
Well, first of all, loneliness has become one of the biggest epidemics of our time, right? Like people are literally dying of loneliness more than heart disease to some point, right? Do you see, because you've been doing this now for, like you said, 17
years, yeah.
Like, have you seen the evolution through, because now people are dating like they never did before, right? Relationships have now turned into situationships, right? People are mainly dating from dating apps where there's a constant slew of people to choose from. So no one's really investing the time they have. They think, well, if it doesn't work out, I can just go back and swipe left, I can swipe right. And so our brain chemistry has changed now to like how we're dating people. So have you noticed that? Like, what have you seen over the evolution of 18 years of what's happened? And kind of sadly, like the demise of like true connection and relationships.
I think we gravitate towards comfort in whatever form, right? We tend to take the path of least resistance on most things in life. And that's human nature. And what dating apps have done is created the ultimate path of least resistance for, creating at least this idea of activity in your love life.
Right.
And
It's true.
It's kind of scary, because what the biggest evolution I think I've seen is, okay, pre-dating apps, like when I started out, dating sites were still a bit of you didn't really want to say that you were on one. You kept it to yourself. A lot of people felt a bit desperate for being on a site. And then dating apps came along and they kind of normalized things. And as you say, then the tide kind of shifted, and it became less and less taboo for someone to be on a dating app. They weren't so closeted about it. And I think now we've come to a point where there's a kind of full circle thing for a lot of people where they're burnt out on those things. And there's a lot of people swearing off apps because they're just like, I just hate this process. I hate how it makes me feel. I hate the treadmill of it. But I think a big problem is that we've become, much in the same way we have in other areas of our life, we've become dopamine addicts in our love lives.
Totally true.
And the same slot machine that, you know, Instagram or TikTok represents is the slot machine that now love represents. And it's easy to go on and get a hit from a quick connection on an app, to swipe and treat your love life like a video game.
Yep.
But it doesn't fulfill us, and it doesn't feel like real connection. It just is this sort of mind-numbing, like, you know, hit after hit after hit that I can keep going back to. And I think not to get too kind of abstract or philosophical about it, but I think our attention spans in general, our ability to just focus, our ability to sit with anything, you know, I mean, the hardest part about writing a book these days is that we're trained to move at a pace that is the complete antithesis of what it takes to sit in front of a laptop and write for hours on end.
Yep.
There's no novelty to sitting and writing. It doesn't engage you every 3 seconds with a new story. You have to sit and have a relationship with that page. And
yes, so true.
And it is really, really uncomfortable. And it's really uncomfortable even in good times, but it's especially uncomfortable now because we've been trained to have constant hits of dopamine. And so I worry that the same thing has happened in our love lives, where it's kind of hard to sit with anything or anyone for long enough to truly connect with another person. We get home from a date and we start swiping again. And, you're looking for that next hit, and it interrupts any kind of more slow burn process that could happen for us to start to think about someone or get to know someone or be invested in the next phone call with them, because we're so on to the next thing that we're interrupting that
right
narrative all the time.
How do they stop themselves? Because it's a trained behavior, right? And so you would literally have to do a different behavior for long enough to change that neuroplasticity, and that's the hardest thing in the world to do.
It's really hard. And it, more than ever, we have to guard the gates to our mind and our own chemicals,
right?
Because they're being activated all the time by these things around us. Here's an interesting example from my life right now. The happiest month that I had in the last year, I went back to England, apart from the month I got married. Let me just put that out there.
Yes, of course. Congratulations
and I went on
again.
my honeymoon.
Yes.
But the time of my life in the last year where I felt the most connected was I was back home. I was in my mum's house for a month, and with my wife, who was then my fiance. And I woke up every morning early. The nice thing about a UK time zone is that no one bothers you in the morning.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
On an LA time zone, you wake up to a barrage of messages and, people needing you for things and so on. But in England, you get like a 5 to 8 hour head start on everyone, especially if you're doing business with America. So I would wake up and my phone would not have a bunch of messages waiting for me. And if it did, it didn't matter, because I made a policy. I was like, I need to write this book, so I'm not going to check my phone. So I put my phone in the drawer when I woke up. I'd go straight downstairs, make a coffee, and then for the next 3 to 4 hours, I would sit at a desk in a room with nothing else to do, and I would just write. And by the time 10, 11, midday rolled around, my brain would be kind of shot, and then I would go and do a workout. And by 2:00, I came back, and I then allowed myself like an hour on my phone to check my messages. And then I was truly doing like a dopamine detox at this time. So even when I was sat with my family, when we watched a TV show or a movie, I didn't allow my phone to be in the room.
That's great.
I was like trying to do as many analog activities as possible. Like even I remember I was building a Lego set at the time, like a Mandalorian Lego set.
Okay.
So I was like doing that, like when I needed to like feel like I wanted to do an activity,
Right.
I just would sit and do that and talk to my mum in the kitchen while I was doing it. And after a month, I felt amazing. I truly felt like this is a level of peace that I haven't experienced in a long time. And I will tell you that right now I am in the opposite place, because with this book coming out and all the people I am talking to and all of the running around and the shows and but it's more than tired. It is a overstimulation. It is constant like highs. You know, like waking up every morning and there's a new exciting thing, and now you're doing this show, and you know, we're now we're gonna go on Drew Barrymore, and this is happening and that's happening, and it's like all these, like it's like I'm doing drugs every day.
It's like dopamine after dopamine after dopamine
every day. And
do you have to crash though too?
Yes, 100%. I feel more anxious, and I feel like it's not a state that I would want. I'm doing it for like 3 months right now for this book.
Right.
But when this is over,
yeah, you go back to your mom's.
I'm going to go back to my Legos.
Make some Legos, exactly. Mandalorian Legos.
Yeah. I you know, I'm going back to that because you have to make a conscious choice to opt out.
Yeah.
And you know, Mitch Albom said, if you don't like the culture, you have to be brave enough to create your own.
Yeah.
And it takes guts, because you will feel on some level like you are missing out, or that life is moving at a pace that you're not keeping up with, or that,
totally.
You know, but you have to, if what you're looking for in your life is depth. And as much as the point I'm making might sound like a kind of very general point about life and work, it's just as relevant to our love life. I actually believe in this idea in our love life of go slow to go fast. That when we're panicked and we want it to happen, we're like dating apps, this, that, activity, like, you know, keep texting people. But there's an anxious energy that's produced by all of that activity that stops us from creating a rhythm that is actually right for the kind of connection that we're looking for. And our rhythm is something that instead of adhering to the rhythm of everyone else, we have to get better at getting other people to adhere to our rhythm.
That's such a good point.
And
I agree.
in dating, you will, if you have a much more intentional, mindful approach to dating, you will still come across everyone else who's like on drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's like running. You'll come across that. But people who aren't like that will see you. It's like you'll be in a different lane in the pool.
Yeah.
And the people in that lane will start to notice you, because they'll go, oh, this is a person who's being much more intentional. And there'll be other people who recognize, even though they're in this like cycle, they may see the way you're doing it or feel your energy and think there's something different about this. Like they can sense that there's a difference in the way that you're approaching it. And that alone can be very, very attractive. Because,
I think so. So what you're really saying is you have to make a concerted effort to not behave that way. And you have to be cognizant of what you're putting out there really in that way. Because it doesn't happen just because you want it to happen. Because I think a lot of times people say, oh, I want a relationship. I want someone like this. But what people say and how they act and what they do are very different things, right? And usually there's a major disconnect. Like typically, and you talk about this in your book a lot, which you know I can relate to. It's like, actually, someone once said to me very recently, what are you attracted to that doesn't serve you? Right? I thought that was a very
great question.
Isn't that a great question? And it made me like really think about things and like in a different way. And I realized also what you said was, why are we attracted to people that are not nice to us or who are like, who don't serve us? Because that's typically what the question was. Like, what are you attracted to that doesn't serve you? Is basically like that in a nutshell, right? Why is it that we are drawn to and we gravitate to people who, to most of the time, are not the nice ones, who are not the caring, considerate ones? Like, what's wrong with us?
There's a
Yeah,
there's a few things going on there. I mean, there's
I'm asking for a friend, by the way.
well, I think on one level it's the scarcity mindset. We're worried that it's something better is not going to come along, so then we just grab at whatever is available. Then there's the fact that we tend to gravitate towards what we know, not what will make us happy. So if something is just if something activates our nervous system in a familiar way, then we're drawn to that. It's something that feels comfortable to us. It's a simple but profound principle that everyone should know about people, is that we tend not to be drawn to what makes us happy. We're drawn to what is familiar. And what is familiar can be hell.
Right.
But it's known territory for us.
Is that trauma bonding kind of?
Well, I always think of it as like we have grown up with a certain model of the way the world is, or the way relationships are, of what our expectation of life is. And it's very easy to keep repeating that because it's hard to step outside of a reality that we don't know. It's actually firstly, we may not even know that what we keep reproducing is just our private bubble of reality. It's not the world itself. We don't necessarily know that because we've never stepped outside of it. So it's when, I use the example in the book of the dolphin that's raised in captivity that, grows up being taught that the way to get fish is from humans, and the way to get those fish is to jump through literal hoops and do backflips and do tricks. And
right. That's all you know.
that's what the dolphin knows. If the dolphin's released into the ocean and it starts doing backflips for food,
Right.
it's not going to be very valuable. Or swimming up to humans on boats might be fatal in the ocean. But it's not the dolphin's fault that it's doing that. It's just that's what it was taught in the tank. And by the way, when we were in the tank growing up, we didn't know it was a tank. We just thought it was life.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
we go out into the ocean and we keep repeating the same thing. And it's not as simple as, we have a self-worth problem. If a dolphin starts, doing the same tricks it learned in the tank in the ocean, we wouldn't say the dolphin had a self-worth problem.
Right. Exactly.
We'd say it had a pattern that it was repeating. And that's true for a lot of us, is we have a pattern that we're repeating because that is what's familiar to us. And so we have to start getting curious about other ways of being that fall outside of our reality. I had a woman who she'd been abandoned a lot in her life, and it became her core wound was abandonment. She found herself in a situation with a guy where he'd been treating her well, and it was going great. And then one afternoon, he had a little get together with his friends, and he didn't invite her, and it triggered everything for her. He doesn't like me as much as I like him. He's not proud of me. He doesn't want to introduce me to his friends. This, that, the other. It was a big story in her mind. And so in the middle of him getting together with his friends, she said, "Why didn't you invite me?" She texted him. And he said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just haven't seen these friends in a while. I was getting everyone together for a little bit." He said, "Can I call you tonight?" And she said, "Don't bother." And 3 days later, she's speaking to me saying, "I don't know what to do. He hasn't called." Now, this is a really prime example of, we don't know why he didn't invite her, right? But she went straight to a place that got her activated. And based on that, there was a familiar pattern she went to, which is, I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. So instead of having a moment of vulnerability or connecting with you or sharing a little bit about who I am and the fact that, or even calling him and being like, hey, I probably don't have a right to feel this because, you were just hanging with your friends and that's fine. But it just made me sad that, you didn't invite me and, I got in my head about it. She could say that. It could be an opportunity
Right.
for him to ask where that comes from or for them to have a conversation about it. But instead, she just put up the walls, became avoidant, and pushed him away. And the sad part about that is that we're often really good at just recreating the very thing we don't want.
Right.
Like the thing we want least in the world, we're really good at recreating because we just get into these grooves is what we know. And it becomes this kind of almost this thing we can't take our eyes off of.
Yeah.
Is what we know.
Although I feel like what I just said to you about like being attracted, like there's certain qualities that people are typically drawn to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Charm, right? Like being funny, charming, like all those things. But those are like usually very surface, topical things that don't really serve us, right? Like as a girl, right? I'm attracted to guys or who are like that, right? Confident, funny, charismatic. A lot of times those guys don't make the greatest partners though. They've learned how to to be a great sales representatives. That's what happens a lot of times. Now I am speaking for because women talk about this all the time. And I bet you, similar to how you probably were, right? When you were saying you were you probably weren't like an asshole you were probably very nice.
Not intentionally,
Not
anyway.
intentionally.
Yeah.
You probably were I think even in your paragraph when you first opened the book, you were charismatic, you were nice, you were chivalrous. You did all the nice things to make someone want to like you, even though you knew that you're probably not the greatest partner. I think that's what people get drawn to, right? Is this like superficial level. And it's very hard for people to separate that from something more. And then you also write about the facts. This is a two-prong question, which I love when you said this, that connection isn't what you should be striving for. It's compatibility. Because I think we always say to each other, well, we have such a great connection, or the connection. Like you always hear the word connection. It's like the big hashtag in relationships. But like the truth of the matter, just because you do have a connection, and this is the part of the book I was reading like ferociously. It's really doesn't matter. It's about, are you guys compatible? And people again mistake those two. Can you talk about why and just expand upon those things? Because I think that a lot of people that would resonate with on both sides.
Well, firstly, to your point about all those attractive qualities, we have to go a little deeper in terms of what it is we're looking for. Mm-hmm. It's fine to like someone who's charming. It's fine to like someone who's funny or sexy or any of those things. But that can't be all you need.
Right, but we mistake it for lust and love or lust and compatibility.
Well, you can desire someone, but we have to start separating what makes someone desirable from what makes them a great partner. And it has to be as much a criteria for who we invest in that they are a great partner as they are desirable. It can't be, I always say to people, it's fine to want chemistry, but why don't you want kindness as much as you want chemistry? Mm-hmm. Why is it that chemistry keeps winning over someone who's decent or someone who's kind or someone who's thoughtful or someone who's loyal or empathetic or consistent? You have to suspect yourself if you have really, really high standards for chemistry and really low standards for how someone treats you.
Right.
That's the problem. Fine, want those things, but never at the expense of someone's character or the way they show up, the way they invest in you. That has to be The price of entry has to be the deeper things that you really need. And by the way, how do you get the bravery or the courage or the resolve to make those things your price of entry? You look at relationships you've had in the past where you really wanted to hold on to someone, where you thought they were so amazing, where you thought, I can't lose this person. And you remember that whatever it was you were missing in that relationship made you dreadfully unhappy. It made you miserable. Even when you were telling yourself, I'll never be able to, I can't lose this person, it actually made it intolerable to stay.
Absolutely.
And when you know what that was, maybe you didn't feel seen by that person. Maybe you felt like you never got their time. Maybe you felt like you never really trusted them, or that they were never really in the relationship. Whatever it was you were missing made it hell to be there. We may not have admitted that at the time, because when we're in those relationships, we have to sell ourselves on staying.
Right. We justify behavior.
Yeah. And we kid ourselves about how happy we are.
Right.
But when we leave and we look back, you go, oh my God, I was a wreck. I was an anxious, sad wreck in that relationship for so long. And when you remember and connect to how painful that was, you don't need self-worth to decide that you'll never again be in a relationship without those core things. You just need to know how much it hurt last time and how you could never do it again, regardless of how charismatic or sexy someone is. So that's what I want to say about that. In terms of the connection piece, we consistently overvalue connection. It is such a seductive thing to find someone who we like, who likes us back. That is like, it feels like the Holy Grail when we find it. It feels like lightning in a bottle. How often do I like someone, let alone they like me? Oh my God. It feels like the most important thing on earth.
Yeah.
But when the person we have this with is telling us they don't want a relationship, or they're not sure about us, then it counts for nothing. It's not important. In the book, I talk about there being 4 levels of importance in
I love that part.
a relationship. And it's so important because once people have this model, they never look at their love life the same way again. The first level of importance for any situation in your life, and everyone listening to this can imagine, as you think of someone in your life, maybe you're struggling with, or you're hung up on, or you can have in your head which one of these levels you think you're at. Level 1 is admiration. That's just where you have someone that you think is great. They may not even know you exist. You think this person's hot, whatever. There's something about them. Level 2 is mutual attraction. That's the level we're talking about when you feel a connection, whether it's a deeper connection, whether it's physical connection, you feel that mutual attraction with them. That's the level that's really dangerous. Level 3 is commitment. The reason level 2 is really dangerous is because it feels really important. But without level 3, without someone actually saying, yes, I want you, I want to be with you, it's worthless. It's utterly worthless. It's like 2 people discovering a plot of land together, and it's a beautiful plot of land. You could build the most amazing house there, but it's still just a plot of land. A relationship is the thing you build on that land.
Right.
You can't kid yourself that the plot of land is the thing. It's not. So commitment is the commitment to actually build something on that plot of land. And then even commitment on its own isn't enough. You need compatibility. And compatibility is level 4. Do we work together? Okay, we have mutual attraction. We've both said yes to a relationship. But does this work? Do we share a vision for our lives? Do we have lifestyles that are compatible? Do we have a shared moral compass? Do we think the same way about life?
Right.
Do you feel it's okay to lie all the time? And I really value honesty. Do you like to go out till 5 a.m. every night? And I really enjoy the morning.
Right.
And okay, if that's true, can we still find enough quality time together outside of the nighttime in the morning that we can sustain a relationship? Like, compatibility matters. And my whole thing is this: if you have mutual attraction, commitment. They're saying yes, and you are too. And you have compatibility. It works.
Right.
And then the love of your life gets taken from you in a horrible accident. That's tragic. That is a real tragedy. But if you're in level 2 and the person that you say is your person is walking this earth, they're still here, ordering things on Amazon, and they're choosing not to be with you, then that's not a tragedy.
No.
They could be with you and they're choosing not to. So we have to lose the story that this person is my person. They're not your person. Someone can't exist and they're somewhere right now and not choosing you and they're your person. It's a story we have in our mind. It's not reality. And I think that is a tremendous help in getting over people, because you may still need to grieve. But my friend, I don't know if you know David Kessler, the grief expert, one of the leading grief experts, he said to me, grief is a result you didn't want.
Right. That's a good,
And when someone you thought would become more says they don't want more, that is a result you didn't want. So it may still require grief, but it's not the grief of I've lost my soulmate.
Right.
It's the grief of disappointment that this person never became my soulmate, even though I thought they were, and it turns out they weren't. And I'm grieving the loss of that future and the idea that I had about this person and this relationship. What I'm not doing is living in the chronic grief of thinking that person is the love of my life and they're still out there. That's the kind of grieving that doesn't go away. And I have watched the extremes of this, where people 20 years, 30 years on are still talking about a person who was in their life 30 years ago that they've never gotten over. And I want to say you are locked in a story right now that is the great tragedy of your life, if you're not careful, is going to be giving over your life to this fake story.
Because they're stuck in level 2, which is the connection part, right?
Because you're valuing this idea,
right? The story in the head, in your head,
not the reality. If it was the reality, it would be the reality. You would be with this person. We have this great story. I mean, I love the movie Titanic. I will cry every time in that movie.
Yeah, I love it too.
But if you really stand back, there's something a little odd about the idea that a woman in her, I don't know if she's 90s or over 100, I can't remember, but she's pretty old.
She's almost 100. I think she is 100. Yeah.
Still telling this story about a guy that she knew for about 5 days on a boat.
I guess you're right, but I think I totally
she didn't even know him.
She didn't know him.
She didn't know him.
But I think that's why that part of the book I think is so good, because I really believe that number 2, that connection part, is where most people do get stuck.
Yes.
I mean, I really do believe it. Like, going through it, like I'm married now, whatever, but there's always these people that you had this thing with, that things never turned out for one reason, who cares, circumstance, that I don't know if it's because, and almost everybody I know gets stuck in this area at some point.
All of us.
And it depends on it depends on the length of time. Maybe some are still stuck in it, but that's why it resonated so strong. And I think it depends on, it's a potential, like kind of opportunity or potential that was never turned or like seen out. So that's what
the unhatched eggs of our life.
Right.
I think that, have you seen this new show One Day?
Oh no, what is that one?
The big new show on Netflix. It's like a very popular show at the moment. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but
should I watch it? Is it worth it?
Oh, it's a lovely show, and it's extremely engaging and entertaining.
Okay.
Yeah. And me and my wife loved it, but it's a story about these two friends or these two people who meet in college, and this kind of constant, will they, won't they type story.
Yes. Okay.
And it's a very dangerous story because you see, how someone can give up so much of their life.
Yes.
Like giving someone so much real estate in their mind. And in TV shows and movies that can pan out nicely.
Yeah.
But in real life, bad bets are just bad bets. They're not
Totally.
You wouldn't take your life savings and put it on a 1 in 1,000 bet. But it's like we do that in our love life all the time.
But do you think people are doing it as a distraction?
Well, that's an interesting point. I think it can be a form of avoidance.
Yep.
I think it's a way to... It's a way to not be an active participant in our own life. It's a way to not be involved. Because it fulfills something.
Yeah.
It feels...
Fantasy. It's like a fantasy is what it is.
It's a fantasy, and it's safe. I can talk about it from the comfort of my bedroom, and it requires me to risk nothing. It lives on as this endlessly fascinating, mysterious thing. It never has to disappoint me, even though ultimately it's the great disappointment of our lives that we've given up on the real thing. But
so many, and also, like you said, hours. And literally, if you kind of add up all the hours that people spend on this area in their life, it'd probably be like years of time spent.
Yeah. Well, people give up decades to these ideas and these stories, and it's really tragic. It's easier to like kind of nurture that egg
Totally.
that never hatches than to go out and live. Because, by the way, living is often, it's messier, and you know this, with people in business, it's easier to talk about an idea of a great concept you have. To go out and actually put time and energy into it.
Yeah.
It's harder. Writing is the same way.
Analogy, actually.
My writing coach said to me, never expect what you put on the page to be as good as how it is in your mind.
Yeah.
It's a kind of poor version of this perfect idea you have in your head, and you're just doing your best to try to get as close to that as possible. But you have to accept the fact that it is this thing that you end up on the page with is often a very disappointing version of this thing you have in your head. But at a certain point in life, you have to decide, am I a real writer, or am I someone who talks about this great book idea they've got? And in our love life, we can either be in the game and active and involved, or we can hold on to this perfect unhatched egg and talk about how great it would have been or could be if only. And it comes down to, do you want to live a real life?
That is seriously such a great point. And that's a great analogy too, right? Because 99% is perspiration, right? Like 1% is the idea in business, right? Like anyone can talk, it's fun to fantasize and think and dream, right? But like the sweat comes in the actual hard work, and it's
as it does in a marriage.
Yeah.
You look at, whenever I hear of love at first sight, I kind of think, what an insult to marriage.
Yeah, right.
The marriage is this path that people take that it takes guts, and it takes effort, and it takes two people being in this marathon together and figuring it out as they go, and constant, doubling down on their commitment to the relationship and to making it as good as it can be, and going through hard times together, and the days where it's just rough, or the periods of life where there's financial instability and you find a way to stick together, or illness and you're taking someone to the hospital, and you're like, that's the guts of a relationship. When someone says they were my person and they've known them for 3 months, I'm like, stop wasting my time.
Yeah.
They haven't, most of what a relationship is, you've never seen from that person. How could you have seen it from that person?
It's impossible. Then how do you get over a relationship you never had? Because this is what it really is. People have to, what's a tactical way to get over a relationship that you never had? Is it just to, again, be cognizant of it and act differently? Start dating people?
You put intention behind moving forward in your life, like real intention. It's like a breakup. There's a grieving period, and everyone knows who's gone through a terrible breakup. There's a zombie-like period where you're just good for nothing. But at a certain point, you have to put intention behind moving on. You can't be passive about it. It is a war of attrition against those feelings. It is waking up one day and deciding, let me get everything out of this fucking apartment that has a connection to them, because it is not helping me to see that picture over there, or to see that memento we got from that time in Cabo, or I don't need that stuff around me. Let me get them off of my social media. Why am I still following them? Why haven't I muted them already so that I don't see their posts? Why am I still talking about them with friends? Come to think of it, when my friend comes to me for lunch and says, oh, they've started dating so-and-so or whatever, why am I not telling my friend, hey, I love you, but I need you to just stop talking about them, because I don't want to have them as a conversation anymore. They are not a topic of conversation that's relevant to my life anymore. So it would really help me if we stop talking about them altogether. We can talk about anything else in the world. It doesn't help me to know this information. You have to be intentional about moving on. And a lot of people are not willing to be intentional about moving on, because it's harder to go and live a real life. It takes effort to go and live a real life, and real life is often underwhelming.
Totally true, right? Like 100% true.
But the only way to really, I believe this to my core, you can decide to create magic in your own, how do I say this? I remember going to Disney World as a kid and like being mesmerized, and I developed a mild obsession about like this place, and I just wanted to go back there. And I was just, the feeling it created in me, which of course they are absolute pros at and have had decades and decades of practice.
Yes.
It stuck with me. This was a magical place, and I wanted to be back there. I wanted my whole life to feel like that. And I can look back at it now, and firstly, let me tell you this, I never really grew out of it. Like, I'm still the person that if you say, let's go to Disney this Saturday, I'm like, yes.
You love it that much.
It can never live up to the thing in my head,
right.
Firstly. The crowds are obnoxiously infuriating. The lines, the this, the that, like it's a better idea in my head than it is in reality. But the feeling is something that I'm always like wanting to get back to somehow, right?
That's so true. It's like heroin though, right? Like, I don't know, I've never taken it, but they say like you're always trying to get back to that first high.
Right.
You know?
And that for me, it like created this idea of how life could feel.
Yeah.
And I was a kid at the time, but I remember at a certain point in my life thinking to myself, obviously real life is not that, but you at a certain point have to decide, okay, there's a magic that I felt there. Like, there's something maybe silly about it. There's something like, but it's just the truth. Like there's a magic that I felt that is a feeling I want to recreate in my life. And I have to, if I want to live a real life, I have to make myself responsible in whatever modest way for creating that magic in my life. Like I have to be the author of the magic in my life. And the great kind of experiment of life, the great challenge of life is that there are 1,000 ways you can do that. What does it look like? If you come to my retreat that I've been doing for 17 years of my life, it is...
Is it the virtual retreat? Or
no, the live, like we do it in Florida. So it's a 6-day event.
A 6-day like relationship retreat?
No, like everything. Our relationship with ourselves, our emotions, our healing, our
For
patterns
6
in life
days.
for 6 days. Yeah.
Where? Where is it?
Fort Lauderdale. Yeah. I've been doing it for, most of my entire adult life.
How, first of all, you said 6 days? How many people show up to this thing?
300. Yeah.
Is it just you, or do you bring other people?
We have like occasionally we'll
Sorry,
have
not
like
to digress. But
no. We'll have like someone come on for an hour or so. But no, ostensibly I am on stage for 6 days. Yeah, I speak probably
Wow.
for 40 hours over that week.
I would imagine so, because if anything, the one thing everybody has in common is relationships. You know, like people in relationships of some kind. Like, I would imagine you get all walks of life there. Do you get-
Everyone. And some people, a lot of people there want to find love and they're working on the deeper patterns and the healing that they need to do.
Right.
But a lot of people are there and they're married and they're just there because they're like, there is something getting in the way of my peace, or there are patterns in my life that are affecting me and I really want to heal. Some people are just left a 20-year narcissistic marriage and they're like, I want to rebuild my life again. I want to reclaim my identity and I want to enjoy this new season of my life and finally get over these patterns from the past. So it's a huge range. But anyone who's come to that retreat knows that my soul is all over that thing. It is,
Wow,
It
yeah.
is like, people show up and there's events in the evening that are really unique. Like we have a drive-through movie theater night that we do after day 2, because day 2 is this very intense day for people. And there's a lot of like deep work that people do that leaves them emotionally tired at the end of the day. So we turn everyone into just children at the end of the day. And we do it's like we turn this inside space into something that feels like an outdoor movie theater where everyone sits in these makeshift cars that we create. They come through a
Wow.
1950s concession stand with actors and people playing all of the roles. And they step into a world. And and in the days during the sessions, I used to be a DJ for 10 years when I was...
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad owned a nightclub when I was growing up. So I started DJing at 11 years old.
Oh, that's so cute.
And I, from the age of 15, I was a nightclub DJ. So music was always a very big part of my life growing up. My dad DJ'd in that club. So when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my memories are of him playing records at home, practicing, getting ready for the night when he was going to DJ. So music was a huge part of my life. And if anyone comes to my retreat, you'll see like music is a huge part of that experience and that event. My love for music comes through every pore of that retreat. So between like all of my influences in life show up in this event. It's not like you come to an event and you're just sitting in a chair and you're like, okay, I have this speaker that's speaking to me.
Right.
It is the same way that when I went to Disney World and it created a world for me, I create a world for people on those 6 days that truly for them is like I stepped into a different world. And there is a magic in every part of it that is unique to me and the experience that I bring. And I obsess over it. It's like this has been my baby for over a decade. And I obsess over this program and the details of it to the extent that is absurd. Like the final night, we have a 1920s experience where people come into like this private party that's like, Prohibition era. They have to come through a barber shop and have like knock and use a password. And like, it's all like we construct a barber shop for the purposes of this evening, along with this whole set backstage. And it's like it's a whole thing, but it's my point is,
experience, it sounds
it's
like.
an experience, but it's my DNA because of all the things that have touched me in my life.
Yeah.
That I then go, I've felt something. How do I bring, instead of being a seeker of magic who like says, how can I go out and get this magic from somewhere else? How can I be an author of this magic?
Yeah.
How can I bring it to my life in a way that is modest? It's not like I don't have that budget. I don't have a Disney budget, but I can do it my way in a way that's really special to me.
Oh yeah.
I think of I know this may sound to people like this weird abstract point, but I promise you it's not. I think of all of life this way. It's you can create that magic. When you come out of a relationship and you are hung up on someone and what you've lost, and you you do anything to go back there, but that person doesn't want to be with you. Well, if we're not careful, we are now the magic chasers. We're the magic seekers. We're saying that person was our magic and that we need to get that person back because they were the magic in our lives and the magic left. But what if you said to yourself, well, look, 50% of the magic in that relationship was me. I was 50% of that relationship. So 50% of what I miss is myself.
Yeah.
And I take me with me. And when a lot of people add up why a relationship was great that they had, they start to realize they were more than 50% of the magic. The depth of the communication or the vulnerability was because of the way they opened up and the way they made someone feel safe and create an environment for that. All the little details of the trips they planned and the things they did, so much of that was them. It's like you were the magic.
Yeah.
So why are you acting like the magic in your life left? You have the magic now. You can decide what you want to do with it. You took you with you in that deal. You didn't lose you. So that...
What a great reframe, by the way.
It's huge. It's huge. 50% of what, at the minimum, 50% of what you miss is yourself, and you still have that.
Do you need, though, like a sense, like, where does confidence come into this place? Because do you need a really good self-esteem, a strong self-esteem, and a strong sense of self to be able to do those reframes, to be able to see things that way and have that perspective? Because a lot of times what people end up doing is they acquiesce to the other person because of fear. They're afraid they're going to lose that relationship, so they'll settle for less. They'll acquiesce for good enough because, they don't want to have a hard conversation, a bad conversation that may take them down the different path than what they're on, right? Because sometimes what feels better than having nothing. Or people rather be with someone who's like, okay, versus being alone. Because it goes back to that whole loneliness loop that we talked about, right? So where does confidence and self-esteem play into having a really healthy relationship?
Well, we have to start, I think, by defining what we mean by confidence, because I think what a lot of people, when they refer to confidence, they're referring to some kind of, outward energy of boldness or...
Boldness is my line, but no, because I think there's a difference. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there is a difference between like true self-confidence and like you said, like just being like arrogant or like outwardly confident.
Yeah, but I think there's a.
My book is it's all about being bold.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that's why I was laughing. That's why I'm laughing.
But if you look up the definition of confidence, one of the key definitions is a state or feeling of certainty about something. So there's something to that where you go, oh, confidence is just a feeling of certainty. So then you go, well, certainty about what? what can we be certain about? And I think a lot of us are we're failing to feel confident because we're trying to have a feeling of certainty about something that you can't have certainty about. Certainty that someone's not going to cheat on you.
Right.
Certainty that you're going to be attractive to this person. Certainty that, even in a sense, certainty in your abilities, which may or may not hold over time.
Right.
We're trying to find, and by the way, if you ever want to know why you were so anxious and insecure in a relationship, often you were blaming it on yourself. But the problem was, I can think of a relationship where I was trying to feel confident and blaming myself for not feeling confident. But I look back now and I go, of course you didn't feel confident. You sensed that you couldn't feel certain about this person because they weren't in it the way you were. So you were trying to feel certain about a situation that was inherently uncertain. That is a recipe for not only not feeling confident, but for blaming ourselves for not feeling confident.
So true. That's a total loop that so many people play, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so confidence is, am I trying to find certainty in the right things? And what would be a safe place for me to put my certainty? It's a good question.
Yeah.
I have become like the area that solved it for me when it came to confidence was understanding that I don't need to feel like I match up to anybody. I don't need to feel like I'm special. I think we get preoccupied with trying to feel like we're special.
That's so true.
And it's
I
a
agree.
losing battle. It's a losing battle. There's so many interesting, talented people in this world. I don't, firstly, I make a point not to over-respect anybody. But I also...
I got to take a note. That's a very good point. I love that.
But I also, with myself, make a point not to need myself to be too special. I'm one of 8 billion people. You know what? I'm not special. I really don't. I truly don't go through life thinking like I'm special. I don't.
You really not? You really don't?
I'm one of 8 billion people.
Okay.
What does that even mean, I'm special?
Because I think there's something to be said for everybody wants to feel special. So I'm Jewish, right? And there was a rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Shmuley, okay? He was like a famous rabbi. And he had his whole message about that everybody wants to feel chosen. Every girl wants to feel chosen. And if they feel chosen, that's the pinnacle, that's the feeling that everybody wants to have. And if you don't make them feel chosen, the relationship will suffer in some way. And you're saying the opposite. You're saying we're not that special. No one's that. And I get what you're saying.
I'm saying you have to choose yourself.
It's true.
You just have to choose yourself because it's not. There's nothing special. Like
I totally understand what you're saying.
Here's the thing: as soon as you try to convince yourself you're special, you are on a losing track.
100%. So that
because someone, whatever you're thinking you're special for, so sooner or later, someone's going to walk into the room with more of that thing.
Be more special. I know in that way. I could not, and that's also why a lot of times people are they end up alone because they think they're better than everybody else, and that no one will stack up to who they are. They think they can always do better, find better, be better.
Or they always think everyone's better than them. Both are ego. But
both are ego.
Ego can be I'm better than everyone else. Ego can also be everyone's better than me. They're both product of ego.
Yeah. So you're saying
we often think of ego just in the sense of someone being egotistical or arrogant, but ego, the same thing that says I'm amazing, is the thing that tomorrow can make you say I hate myself, I'm not good enough. There are two sides of the same
100%.
coin. So my point is the whole game is wrong.
That's such a good point.
What we have to do is say, okay, let me get out of this thing of trying to think that I'm special. What if I played a different game altogether? What if I said, I'm one of 8 billion people? Why am I special? Well, maybe I'm not special. But that's also true kind of everyone's kids.
Right.
We all know other people's kids aren't that special.
Right.
but the parent feels like they are.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? If you ask a parent, why do you love your kid? They'll look at you like you're a crazy person. They'll be like, what are you talking about? Because they're my kid. Because they're my son. She's my daughter.
Yeah.
They don't, if you say to a parent, why do you love your child? They don't say because they get A's in math and because they did, you can't imagine what she was wearing this morning. She looked so cute. They don't say that.
Nope.
They say, but because they're my child. It doesn't register in the normal way that we try to make someone special. What's special is the relationship I have to my child. They are mine. Mm-hmm. So now apply that to self-love and self-confidence, and you actually have a formula that doesn't require you to feel uniquely special in any way whatsoever other than one, which is to say that of 8 billion people on this earth, the only person that is responsible for the human that is us is ourselves. It's almost like we were given a human at birth, and our only job for the rest of our lives was to take care of this human. And someone had to usher us into adulthood. They may or may not have done a good job of that, but for a while, someone's job was to keep us alive before we could do it for ourselves. And then at a certain point, what maybe no one ever told us was, hey, just so you know, from this point forward, by the way, you've always had this human. It's always been your human. But from now on, it's your job to take care of this human. You have full custody of this human. Your job is to take care of them, to nurture them, to try to give them the best life possible, to encourage them to be all that they can be, to stand up for them, to love them. So now what we imagine is if someone said to us, why do you love yourself? You don't go, because I'm so special. You say, because I'm mine. I'm my human. What do you mean? Why do I love myself? I'm mine. That changes everything, because now we don't see self-love as a feeling we have to have towards ourselves, which most of us find really difficult to have towards ourselves.
By the way, I hate that word self-love. I find it to be very repugnant. I think it's
I don't
terrible.
like it until it turns into a verb instead of a feeling, instead of a noun.
I think that's great
because
rebrand.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
Is self-love needs a rebrand.
It does.
It needs to move from the world of feeling to the world of doing. Self-love is an approach. Because when you realize that you're human, you know, firstly, comparison through that lens with other people makes no sense. You can't exchange your human for another human.
Right.
So what's the point in comparing? It's like comparing your kid to another kid. It's irrelevant. This is your kid.
Yeah.
So your job is you just want your kid to be as happy as possible. You're not going, I wish you were better looking like this kid over here. You're going, my job is to make you as happy as possible.
Right.
Well, that's our job with ourselves. So when you look at it through that lens, it changes everything.
That's a great reframe also.
Yeah.
These are great reframes. Like, you know what's interesting about you is like you've been doing this, like how old are you? 39, 40 years old?
36.
Okay, you're 36 years old. You've been doing this since you were like 18, like literally 19 years old, with no life experience in terms of relationships that much, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do you feel like because of now that you've like had like lived life and have had all this like life experience, you just got better of being what you do? Like, are you shocked this is what you're doing? Were you always inherently like good at like picking up these nuances and understanding human nature and relationships? Because honestly, like being 36 and been doing this for 18 years is you were a kid when you started.
Yeah. I had
literally,
no business doing this.
You know what I mean? You had no business at like 19, right? Like, how did that even like happen with you? Like, that's crazy.
Well, I knew I was passionate about it. I didn't...
Even as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, I had picked up, self-development books off my dad's bookshelf at 11 years old. I was like, but it's not... I wish someone someone asked me recently if you could go back and tell yourself at 19 some advice, what would you say as you embarked on this whole journey and this career? And I said, I think I would say to him, you don't need to pretend to know everything, because there's an empathy that you have and an awareness that you have and a energy and a heart that you have that is enough on its own, and that the knowledge will come. And you can educate yourself and you'll have more life experience, but you can take your time and just keep putting out that energy, because that energy is going to help people no matter what.
Yeah.
There's something healing about just that energy, but don't feel like you need to know it all, because that's also going to stunt your growth, because you're going to then feel like you can't admit to areas where you haven't figured it out yet. And, I think what I was blessed with at 19, more life experience than I should have had at 19. And that was intensely valuable for my ability to relate to people, because it had a lot go on. And so I never spoke about any of that, but it was there and it was valuable.
What was it? Like, what did you
A lot. I mean,
experience?
stuff, I talk about it a little bit in the book, but it's just the dynamics of a world that was colorful.
Was it dad being a DJ or?
It was a lot of things coming from different directions in my life, but it's a lot of life experience and a lot of ability to see different sides of life and different sides of people, and to see the rougher sides of life, and to I in a way I count myself very lucky that I grew up with a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I grew up with lots of love in my life. I also grew up with just a lot of sides of life that people don't often get to see, and that was that was valuable for me, because I've always been able to go through life relating to very different kinds of people, and I could be comfortable in every room. And
Right.
that's been very valuable to me.
So your EQ is exceptionally high.
I think that I'm lucky. My mum is one of the most empathetic people I've ever met. And, that gave me a real gift, because I got that from her. That's been in me since the beginning. Over time, you live more of a life and you get humbled in all sorts of different ways. And that one of the most useful things for me was, the real ways especially in my late 20s and early 30s, that I was deeply, deeply humbled by things going wrong in life, and by, making mistakes I never thought I would make. And, just really hitting various rock bottoms for myself that were very useful. I at the time I would have wished for anything else, but I look back now and I really feel lucky to have had those times. That's given me a humility, and it's given me an ability to connect with even more people.
What would be one of those times that really kind of changed the trajectory of how you occur in the world?
Chronic pain, physical chronic pain was one of the big ones. That was like a very, very humbling thing for me, because I developed, when I was in my late 20s, I got tinnitus, which was like ringing in my ears that didn't go away. And
for how long?
I was still there.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you hear it right now? Mm-hmm. You're ringing in your ear right now. Wow.
But it never, and by the way, I didn't notice it until you asked, but there was a time in my life where I had not figured it out. And I think through my panic and my resistance of that, which was a very, very, very dark period of my life, I think brought on all sorts of other symptoms. Like I started to like in addition to the ringing, I got a throbbing in my ear and my head, and this constant pressure and dizziness that just never went away. So I then, it got to a point where the combination of the ringing and the physical sensations that I would have in my head were so bad that I just couldn't enjoy life anymore. I'm a life lover at heart. And I felt like I completely fell out of love with life. I was so mad, and I was so on the edge all the time. I was constantly on the edge of breaking down, of snapping. You know, I never talked about it publicly because I couldn't at the time. I felt like if I talked about it publicly, I'd break. And I went to every kind of doctor, every kind of treatment, everything that anyone ever recommended me. At some point I tried, spent an ungodly amount of money and time and energy trying to figure this thing out. And I went to a therapist at one point and said, that was when I started therapy, it was because of that.
Wow.
Because I'd never done therapy before. And I got to a point in my life where I didn't know what I was going to do. I had been a type A person with a lot of grit my whole life. And I knew how to outwork everything that had ever come up. And now a situation came up that I tried everything to shift and nothing changed it. And it sent me into a complete tailspin because I thought I don't know what I'm going to do. It gives, to this day, it's a weird thing for me to connect with how dark I felt during those times. And I went to a therapist when I was like really truly in a place that scared me. And I said, like, I am gonna live, I've made a decision that I'm gonna live for everyone else, like my family, who I was, able to provide for, my mum and my father, my team, and the people that my work helps. I'm just gonna live for them to make their lives better because my life is over. And bear in mind, I was like 29, 30 saying this. And I didn't have any experience of like feeling joy anymore. I just thought I'm just a walking zombie who's going through the motions, trying not to break down. And that sort of began a whole process for me over years. I mean, I wish I could say that there was like my year of chronic pain, but it was like a 7 or 8 year journey of me figuring out how I was going to relate to this thing that I couldn't change. And that, I'm not, you and I have had a conversation before, I'm not like a very spiritual, I don't go to spiritual language, but like that was, if anything in my life has ever been a spiritual experience, is trying to figure that out. And so that, I don't think you can go through anything that humbles you personally that much without then having something to give at the end of it.
How long is this still happening? Did it end? I mean, it sounds like it was.
The ringing in my ears is still there, but it doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't?
Nope. I've figured it out, and it like doesn't affect me now. And there was a time when, if you'd have asked me, like, there was a time in my life where I would have said to you, there's no way I'll ever be able to be happy with that. And I've figured that out. And the pain that accompanied it, I made some changes in my life, and there were certain elements of my life that were not serving me, and certain things that I started to look. One of the things I realized is all this pain that's there all the time anyway seems to get worse when I'm in a bad emotional place. And I kept noticing that over and over again. If I'm feeling really bad emotionally, or if something activates me, the pain gets worse. So at that point in my life, I was excited to just, if I could shift the pain from an 8 to a 7, that was life-changing for me, because the 7 might be the difference. Going from an 8 to a 7 might be the difference of me being able to function, or me being able to like do some work, or me being able to be pleasant in a room with my family. Or so, and at the time I felt like I was losing myself. I felt like I didn't know, like that Matthew that I knew, that I wasn't there anymore. And because I realized when things made me really unhappy or stressed, it made my pain worse, I started to look for areas of my life that were chronic sources of emotional pain.
Right.
Because if I could take away some chronic sources of emotional pain, I might actually be able to get a handle on my physical pain. And I won't go into detail, but there were a couple of sources of chronic emotional pain that I removed from my life. And it radically changed my symptoms. It like I said, I still have the ringing, although it doesn't bother me. But the physical pain that I thought I'd never be able to cope with long term started to subside when I did that. And so for me, when I've spoken to our mutual friend, Dr. Ramani, about this, she will tell you that one of the things that happens to a lot of people, let's say in narcissistic relationships, which are a source of chronic emotional pain for people, is that often they will start to manifest physical chronic pain, that there will be very real bodily symptoms to the emotional pain they're going through that then they find really hard to shift, because at a certain point you don't know where one begins and the other one ends.
Yeah.
It just becomes knotted together in a way that's hard to untangle. So now you're trying to treat physical symptoms that often have an emotional origin, and it gets really, really confusing and complicated. But I know for me, changing certain things about my life had a massive impact on my symptoms. And so it's become very real to me when I work with people in their relationships, and I see them, on my retreat. I'm not just dealing with people who are trying to get out of difficult romantic relationships that make them unhappy. I'm seeing people have a relationship with a mother who invalidates them at every turn, that is a source of endless pain in their life, or a situation with a sister who they are, that occupies so much of their bandwidth and is weighing them down constantly. And these kinds of relationships in our lives, they can be poison for us. Well, they truly, it's wild what it can do to our health. So I bet, beyond romantic relationships, I'm fascinated by relationships in general, and how much they determine the quality of our life.
I think that is like the single most important indicator of the quality of your life. I mean, wow, that's unbelievable, Matthew. I didn't know that. And so now, now I feel bad that I said you look tired, because, you probably,
No,
if you're having a bad day.
Not at all. No.
Oh my gosh.
No, not at all. I'm happier than I've ever been. I really am. I feel at peace in ways that I never have before in my life. And I know what it is to not be at peace. I know how, I really understand how dark it gets for people. And I have tremendous
empathy, it seems like.
And compassion for when people are in pain, they can't be themselves. You can't see who that person is. And
it's really interesting because, you're a great example, because you never really know what people are going through, right?
No,
Like
you don't.
you would never look
No, you
at
don't.
you, right? Because like from the outside, you're this cute guy who's like super successful in the relationship world, like all the social media accolades and stuff. Like you would look like you essentially had like a perfect, life. No one would ever think unless you like told them that you were in chronic pain like that and that you were like suffering, right? Because I mean, and the reason why I'm saying that is because like a lot of times, like we are very judgmental on people of how they are, but we don't know their story. We don't know anything about them.
No, and I think it's one of the in some ways it's actually one of the best parts about life is that you can get to know people well enough to have context for who they are, to be able to view them holistically, and that's what allows for deep relationships. And I think that we've lost that a little bit, in that dopamine cycle that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We've I think.
But you know what, with you, it's interesting because you had this thing happen to you, right? Is that kind of why you changed the course of like maybe not being the greatest guy to date because you've had life experience that you saw what's important, what's not important, what things are, like
Well, I think it certainly made me a more compassionate person. I think I was already highly empathetic, but it made me like intensely. I felt like I related to a whole new type of
person?
person,
Yeah.
exactly, and that was a real gift. But I think, I mean, there were a couple of things contributing to the way I started to look at my love life differently. I think one of them was getting a terrible heartbreak, and me being the one on the receiving end as
Yeah.
opposed to the one who was responsible for the heartbreak. And that was a big that was a big, very humbling moment, was to have my heart broken as badly as I did. And that, I think that also kind of I came back into my love life in a more compassionate and humble way. But I also realized the way that I was approaching my love life wasn't working for me. It worked for me at a different time in my life. I mean, it never worked. It's not like it ever left me feeling happy at the end of it, but it like worked the same way, partying can work when you're in your early 20s. And by the time you get to a certain age, the hangovers are worse than the
actual
night
partying.
was fun.
Totally.
And so you start to go, I don't know if this is worth it anymore. And I think that started to happen for me. I just started to have this recognition that this is not going to make me happy. This is not going to bring me peace. This is not where it's at. This is leaving me feeling anxious and disconnected. And I need something more than this. And so that was, I think, a big shift for me. And then it's kind of detoxing from those behaviors that
you said those like
take you time to like adjust your nervous system, because you everything's a drug.
Yeah.
Everything's a drug. And at a certain point we have to like find a way to detox from whatever drug is our drug, for whether it's literal substances, whether it's alcohol, whether it's food, whether it's people and the kinds of relationships we have, whether it's our phone. It's at a certain point we have to start valuing a different feeling, because it's not the new way of being. I think that sometimes the trap is that we want the new feeling to be like the old feeling,
right,
but they're not the same. It's like taking a drug addict and being like, on the day they get sober, trying to get them to appreciate a sunset.
Yeah.
It's
so
not
true.
it's not the same thing. A sunset is amazing, but it's not the high that someone got last night from doing drugs. It's a very different feeling, and it might take you time to appreciate the new feeling. And I think there is a kind of, there's a difficult period. There's like a teething period between the old feeling that we're addicted to and the new feeling that's ultimately going to leave us happier and more peaceful. But our body needs to sort of adjust to, and we need to start feeling what are in some ways the more subtle effects initially of the new feeling that don't announce themselves as loudly or as glamorously or as excitingly as pizza and, you know, sex and the novelty. And, you know, it's this other kind of peace that we value. And I think what happened for me is I started to value the new feeling of contentment and peace more than I valued the like highs and the roller coaster. And
but only because you had to go through something to notice that, right?
I think, well, yes, and I had to bang my head against the wall enough times getting the old feeling to realize like this isn't working for me anymore, and it's becoming more and more apparent that it's not work. Like with any addiction, you know, it gets to a point for people where the consequences are getting greater and greater, and the fun part is becoming more and more. It's no longer the fun part is no longer the foreground and the consequence is the background. It's the consequences of the foreground, and the fun part is the sort of distant background that you're scratching around to still try and experience, but is more and more elusive.
I get that. Exactly. I have one more question. I mean, I got a bunch of questions, but I mean, I know. Well, wait, actually, I'm looking at this and I wanted to ask you something because I saw this. Why is happy enough a superpower?
Yeah, happy enough is like I feel like when people first hear happy enough, they feel like it's a sort of, the last chapter of the book is called Happy Enough. And I think it's quite countercultural to the optimized, be your happiest type rhetoric that we hear these days. But
welcome to Instagram, baby.
Welcome to Instagram. Happy enough for me arose first out of that time of chronic physical pain where I had to,
that makes sense.
I realized I need to get to a point with this. If this chronic pain is never going to go away, because I had surrendered to that. At a certain point, I gave up on the idea that it's going to go away, because the hope was the worst part about it, was the feeling that it was going to get better, and then it didn't. So I gave up on that hope, and I said, I need to find a way to manage my relationship with this to the point where I can be happy enough to still live a good life with this. And that became my superpower, was knowing that I could be happy enough even in difficult circumstances. And I took great pride in that. I you know, it almost became a part of my like fight, was to be happy enough. And I think that everyone can benefit from thinking about happy enough as an achievable thing for themselves that actually has tremendous power, because the opposite of happy enough is never enough, right? And we live in a world, you know, especially in certain parts of the world, and including the one we're sitting in right now, where we are overflowing with people who are the never enough types. And I kind of realized that so many of the people that I'd started to admire or come to admire were people who were good at happy enough. You know, like I tell a story of my cousin Billy, who had his bachelor party last year, and him and a group of friends all went to Barcelona. And it just, you know, when I go home to England, I'm around very different people than I am around when I am here in Los Angeles.
Totally.
And they have very different lives. And despite the fact that they have very different lives and they have a lot less, firstly, they are absolutely not less happy. And true. Actually,
more happy.
The certain people in my life are way, way more happy. And Billy, my cousin Billy, is one of them. And I love him so much because when I'm around him, I see this happy enough idea constantly. You know, we were at this little hotel in the middle of Barcelona. It was like a 3-star, you know, people just coming in and out type hotel. They had this little pool that was like the size of a hot tub. It was ice cold. And
But don't you like cold plunges? I thought you did.
I do, but I only like cold plunges when I'm telling myself it's a cold plunge, not when I'm telling myself it's a pool. Yeah. But there was this tiny little ice cold pool and a little like concrete deck in this hotel that all the guys were sitting on these like, you know, sort of plastic chairs sat around. It felt like, you know, like a college
totally. I can
type,
see it.
You know, and we're all sat around and everyone's having a beer and you know, Billy, this is how he is. Like he walked around this deck and he came over to us and he's just like, isn't this amazing? He said, we've got this view over Barcelona. We've got a pool to cool off when we want to cool off. We've got this beautiful like roof deck, all sat around chatting. He was just like, I just love it. This is so great. It turned out perfect. And I just thought, that's like Billy. That like he just he turns. It's not just that he's happy enough. It's when you're around Billy, enough feels like more, and you can't help but be infected. You just, everything feels better around him. Yeah. Right, because he's an author of magic, and that for me, those are my heroes in life. Is people who live like that. And that's why for me, like when I got to happy enough with my pain, I felt like I could make an impact again. Like I can only talk about my pain now because I'm happy enough. When I was just miserable, in pain, I couldn't even talk about it. Now I know I can help people by talking about it, but I can only make that impact because I'm happy enough. Happy enough when you're dating is a superpower, because happy enough, you can even admit that if you found the love of your life, you'd be happier. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to say, I'm just as happy. I don't care. I don't need anyone. I'm happy single. You can be happy enough and still say that if I met the love of my life, that probably would make me happier. But I'm happy enough. And when you're happy enough, it's a superpower, because if someone comes through that doesn't treat you well or doesn't meet your needs, no matter how great they appear on paper or how eligible you think they are, you're happy enough to say no. You're happy enough to hold. Yeah. And that's what changes the game. You don't have to be blissfully happy right now, single. You just have to be happy enough to know that you can always hold. And also happy enough that if the right person comes along, you don't suddenly become a different person around them because you're so freaked out at the idea of ever losing them, because you'll never be happy again.
Well, I think when I heard the word, when you say that, so it doesn't really mean when you're in a relationship and you're happy enough. Like there's all that was a reframe, right? Because you can be like, well, I'm happy enough, even though when you're unhappy, you can just justify it by saying I'm happy enough when you're not really that happy. Well, you're not saying, like, your point is stop looking for perfection, right? And be happy with what it's like. It's perspective, right? Is what you're saying. Like Billy was happy because he had his friends, he had a pool, he had Barcelona to look at. That was great for him. It didn't have to be the $10 million mansion with the beautiful pool.
No, and by the way, I guarantee you there's someone that week who is staying in the Four Seasons in Barcelona going, it's not as nice as the Mandarin Oriental in Barcelona.
Exactly.
There's that person, right?
100%. So he's happy because he's happy with what he has.
He's happy with what he has, and he knows how to appreciate things, and appreciating things does turn them into more. And I think it is relevant to relationships as well, because, you know, there are people that will never be happy as long as a better looking person than their partner can walk into the room.
Right. Exactly. True.
It bothers them. You know, they can't
Totally.
seem to get over that, or that there's a thing that their partner doesn't have that maybe someone else out there has, and they can't.
They're looking for perfection.
Yeah, and they can't be happy enough.
They'll never be happy, though.
Yeah, but it's when you're happy enough, you can build on that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty great place to be. And then when you're appreciating things on that level, that's when you actually start to have an exceptional quality of life. Because like I don't need. I sat with my wife this week, and we're like in a lovely position in life. We love our house. We are financially free to the extent that, you know, it's not that I could never work again, but it's, you know, we're in a position of financial safety.
Yeah.
And I also have friends who have 100 times more than we do.
Yeah. And they're miserable.
And we looked at each other one day this week and we were like, we don't need anything. Like, we're honestly, this is everything we ever need. We don't need anything else. Let's never forget that. We already have everything we need. It's not, I don't drive around in a fancy car. I'm still driving an Audi that I bought 10 years ago.
Good for you,
like,
yeah.
it's not like, but honestly, I know buying another car will not change anything about my happiness. It's not going to make any difference to me. It doesn't matter to me. And I get very sober about the fact that this really is all I need. I don't need more than this. And this isn't the point of leverage for my happiness. That to me is like happy enough. Yes, we could have more. Of course we could have more. You can always have more.
Right.
But actually, the more isn't going to define us.
Totally.
It's not going to make us. That's not going to be the differentiator. And again, like, this doesn't just apply to when you feel like you have a lot or anything like that. Is you can be single and deeply want to find love, but also say, I'm also happy enough. And that happy enough is a superpower because it changes the way you go through life. It just means no one's got a gun to your head. Nothing has that much leverage over you. You're not going through life needing this thing to work so that you can be okay. You're already okay. And that to me, like I said, I mean, those are my heroes these days. It's not the people who have done the most or achieved the most.
Yeah,
People who have achieved that state.
I could not agree with you more. I'm totally on board with that. And I don't even know how long I've had you sitting here, God knows. But I haven't even asked you half my questions. But I'll let you go. But I will say that this book, it's called Love Life. It's so good, really. Even though I have I think 28 pages more, 38 pages more to read. So far, I loved it. You did a really nice job with it. You're great. I actually really I have to say, I like you even more now after this interview because, you know, again, I can see why people really like you. You're so likable because you're so real and you're so good. I know you hate the word connection, but you're really good at meeting someone where they are and connecting to someone where they are. And I really appreciate you being on this podcast. You were such a great guest. Seriously, thank you.
I feel that. I feel the sincerity of that from you, and it means a lot.
Yeah.
It really means a lot.
Would you mind coming back on so I can ask you all my questions next time?
We can get to some of the stuff you wanted to talk about.
Exactly.
No,
I mean,
no, we'll do this again. But but it was a lovely, lovely conversation, and it's there's a comfort I have with you from the moment I walked in the second time.
Oh,
there's
so
a
nice.
comfort I have with you, and I really enjoy our conversations. So thanks for having me. And for anyone who wants the book, it's at lovelifebook.com. You could get it straight from Amazon or wherever you get your books, but I'm actually doing an event on May 4th that's when you buy a book right now, you get a ticket to the event. And it's a virtual event that I'm doing, but it's going to have, everyone who gets a copy of the book right now is going to be automatically enrolled in that event. The event is called Find Your Person, and it's designed to be like a great partner to the book, because the book's going to give you all of the ideas, the self-awareness, the deeper understanding, and the event is going to put you on the path if finding your person is what you want right now. So once you get the book, go to either buy it from lovelifebook.com or go straight to Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or wherever you want to get your books. But come back to lovelifebook.com, because if you just put the code in your receipt into that page, I'll email you with a ticket to the event, and you can come to the event. So it's going to be really special, and the event's only happening once. So I just want to encourage everyone to come and join us for that.
When are you doing, or when do you do that event that you said you do once a year?
The retreat in Florida.
Yeah.
That's this year. It's in September from the 9th to the 15th in Fort Lauderdale. If anyone wants to apply for that, it's at mhretreat.com. That's my initials, Matthew Hussey, mhretreat.com. And I've been doing that for 17 years, and it used to happen twice a year. It now only happens once a year, because it's just a very big week for me, and I pour my heart and soul into it. And it's very, very taxing. So I do it once a year now, but it's a truly, truly life-changing event for the people that come. Yeah.
Do you have mostly single people in general who watch you, or get like who kind of gravitate, or do you have all sorts, like couples?
Increasingly, it's both. I mean, I disproportionately get people who want to find love,
right,
who come to me.
Men, or I would imagine
but
women.
But now, I have more people who are in relationships who follow me for relationship-based content that I do. And we have more men than ever that really enjoy the content, and they see the universality in it. I don't think there's literally not a single thing we've talked about in this podcast that doesn't have relevance to every human being. So
that's why I was asking you, because and you're like you are a guy, and you're talking from both perspectives, right? One question I want to ask you really quickly, I know it's going to be tough, but I promised somebody I was going to ask this question. Men versus women. What's the one thing that men usually ask you, and what's the thing that women usually ask you the most?
Oh man, I don't know what men ask me the most. I suppose, I don't know what men ask me the most. Women, it's so varied, but I think probably I get a disproportionate amount of questions from people about wanting commitment, or wanting for something to progress, and feeling like it's not progressing.
I can see that. You talk about that in the book a lot, though.
Mm-hmm. That's a key thing. But for guys, I don't know. I definitely, I get a lot of questions from guys who are heartbroken, who have really been through it and are struggling to get over someone, or are struggling with their confidence after a relationship has ended.
Thank you. All right. How do we if you don't know, how do we find you?
So I'm on all the platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. YouTube is probably my number one platform. I also have a podcast called Love Life with Matthew Hussey, where it's not just me. I have my wife joining me for lots of episodes, and we do it together a lot. So that's really fun. Come listen to us there. And like I said, I think the book is, if you come and join me on a retreat, that would be amazing, because it's a 6-day experience and we'll really get to know each other. But I think the no-brainer is the book, just because with a book, someone's put hundreds of hours into something.
Totally.
That costs $30.
No, it's amazing.
And it's like it just makes so much sense to get something that's had so much work put into it. And
you should also tell people that I'm going to tell people quickly, this book also is a kind of book that you can put it down and come back to it. And there's sections where you don't have to read it all in one sitting, which I think is really good. Like a novel, you have areas.
Yeah.
How to, the one area, we didn't get to it, but how to have a difficult conversation, or this one, attention is not intention. And
Yeah, there's a
really
chapter
well.
on overcoming heartbreak in there. There's a chapter that's especially relevant to so many women on the question of having a child and how the what do you do when you're trying to find love, but you also feel like you're up against your own biology and that's panicking you. You know, there's a whole chapter on that.
That is so true, and that's such a great part of the book.
It's huge.
Yeah.
You know, there's chapters on confidence. There's chapters on how to leave a toxic or a narcissistic relationship. There's so much in there that I think will hit people at all different stages of love and relationships.
Great job, Matthew.
Thanks. I
Great
really
job.
appreciate you.
No, seriously. Okay, bye, guys.